Once upon about 7 years ago, right in the thick of the elementary school years, my kids were madly scurrying about in various states of undress, finding their shoes, socks, backpacks, getting their lunches in their backpacks, stuffing their faces with food, just the regular morning chaos. There was enough mayhem that I didn't realize that one of the sources of chaos was not among us. He was still in bed. And so I quickly woke him up, grabbed a uniform and socks and shoes, grabbed a bar for him to eat on the way, and we ran to the car. We made it. We were going to be on time. We get in the carpool line. It's our turn. Everybody starts piling out, and this kid is just sitting in the back seat. I'm like, "What's the holdup? It's time for school. Come get out of the car." And I turn around to look, and I see the stuff of nightmares, specifically that one nightmare where you come to school with no pants. So that kid is sitting there with his polo shirt on and bare skinny legs in the back seat of the car. I I was laughing too hard to be frustrated. And so we drove back to the house, and lo and behold, there were his pants on the floor of the garage. He had dropped them in his hurry to come out to the car. We grabbed the pants, put them on, drove back to school. Now we're late. I have to do the walk of shame into the office. But of course, as soon as he got into the school, I had to tell the people at the front desk what had happened, because this took the cake. We'd been to school with no shoes before and had to go back and get them, but pants, that was a new one. That took the cake. Welcome back to the Family Lab podcast. I hope you had a great summer like I did. We're fresh off Labor Day and school's back in session pretty much everywhere now. We've been going for more than 2 weeks around here, and we're starting to pull it together, including me starting this podcast up again. So welcome to season 7. Every quarter, I do an episode about the experiments we've been trying here in the Archibald home. And the problem with that is that I have to wait till the end of a season to record my experiments, because I have to actually do the experiments. But by then, it's kind of too late. You don't really need to hear tips about how to do your summer. So I decided I'm still going to do that episode in a couple of weeks, just so we have it and you can listen to it before next summer. But right now, I want to focus on what we are all focused on right now, which is back to school. And so I'm compiling some of the experiments that I've done throughout the years that I've been recording this podcast, and maybe even some tidbits from other years that I can remember. And we will talk about mostly routine-based experiments that we've tried in the Archibald home over the years. What's worked, what hasn't, and just some general ideas of experiments that you can try in your home. I'll include links to all the fall past experiment episodes in my show notes if you want to hear more details about things, or just, hear the entire episodes. Those will include things like what we did for fall break, more about extracurriculars, chore systems, our annual family retreats, just a variety of the experiments that I've tried in the fall over the years. But for today, we're going to stick to the routines, specifically morning routines, after school routines, and bedtime routines. It was pretty fun to go back and listen to all those, and actually quite astounding, because my life has changed quite drastically in the last 6 years that I've been podcasting. Not only the ages of my kids, they were 3 to 13 when I started, and now they're 10 to 19, which is a big difference in even just the general culture of home. But also I, had an accident in the meantime. I'm definitely less capable. Sometimes I look back at those old episodes and I'm like, who was that Wonder Woman who could do all those things? But different stages. And I actually think it has been good for me to realize that your capacity changes and you have to reprioritize, and you can't do it all, and that's okay. So let's jump right into one of the biggest challenges that I illustrated in the opening anecdote, the morning routine. So we're going to start with my very first experiments episode. It was called Routine Experimentation, and it was in 2019. I'm going to just start by playing a clip of that.
If I've had a late or interrupted night, I let myself sleep until 5:30 or even 6. But this way, even if I sleep in, I'm still up before most of my kids. I usually do a bit of reading and writing and stick in a load of laundry, and it's nice to just enjoy some time to myself before the kids get up. This way I'm actually happy to see my kids when they wake up instead of groaning and trying to get a little more sleep. Plus, now it's rare for us to have one of those rushed woke up late mornings.
Okay, so my first thought hearing that clip was, who was that girl? I definitely am not in the habit of waking up at 5 o'clock. First of all, I am in perimenopause and I do not sleep well. So waking up that early is not as easy for me anymore. Also, my body usually hurts when I wake up. And anyway, I am not springing out of bed at 5 o'clock or 5:30 anymore. But I really love that I did that there. And I can see why I did it. That was a time when I really never had a moment to myself. I still had a preschooler at home, so there wasn't that moment of silence when everybody went to school and, I have basically the whole day to myself in silence. I was craving that. I needed time to myself, and the time that I could find that and carve that out was from about 5 or 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning before I woke up the kids. So I get it. But really don't feel bad if you are not the mom that's waking up before your kids and getting the day going. I happen to be a morning lark. That is how I'm biologically wired. Other people find that time, other young moms find that time to themselves when their kids go to bed at night and, they're still perky and excited to get things done. So take that with a grain of salt. But if you're in that stage, it really is amazing to carve out some time just for yourself to do whatever fills you up. For me, that was reading and writing. For you, it might be something else. But I that was a successful experiment. That really did work to carve out some time for myself wherever I could find it in those times. Once all my kids were in school, it was pretty easy for me to carve out some time to fill my own cup. So, but yeah, that was a great experiment. For me right now, though, I am sleeping until the last minute that I can sleep and staying in bed. I get up and wake my kids. Sometimes I even go back to bed after that because they're pretty self-sufficient getting ready for school. So maybe that's a little ray of hope for those who are still in that really busy morning craziness. But eventually they do get a lot more self-sufficient and you can stay in bed a little bit, lounge around. I'm enjoying that experiment as well. The next one is actually something that I really want to revisit. I'll play this clip too.
Another experiment I started a few years ago was to have a breakfast schedule. Figuring out what to make for breakfast each morning gets old really fast. So we have a set schedule each week: Monday muffins, Wednesday waffles or pancakes, and fried egg Fridays, which is actually eggs made anyway plus sausage or bacon. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, the kids make their own breakfast of cereal, yogurt and granola, toast, oatmeal, or eggs. This just allowed me to take some of the thinking out of it, and then at least 3 times a week, I'm making breakfast for them. The bonus is that on Monday Muffin Day, I can also send muffins with them in their lunches.
Okay, so that one, it actually sounds more ambitious than it was because it's pretty easy to, maybe the muffins, I was making fresh muffins. I am now going to just buy muffins and probably not on Monday because I don't like to go shopping on Sundays. So I'm going to switch those up. I'm going to do pancakes on Monday, which with a mix I can whip up in a few minutes. That's pretty easy, but feels luxurious to my kids. Wednesdays I can do muffins because I can just buy them in the meantime and have those for them in the morning. And Fridays, I'll probably actually just do a smoothie. But the idea of making breakfast for my kids 3 times a week sounds pretty doable in my current state of recovery, and I think it would do us well. We've not been super good at breakfast at all because, the kids will wake up late. I'm not super functional in the mornings yet. Anyway, so I think this year I will be able to go back to that and get them in the habit of eating breakfast. It will do wonders for them to not just be grabbing a bar on the way out of the house and a protein drink. I think it'll be really great. So that is an experiment we are going to retry this fall. And so I will report back on that. Um, to many of you, that probably doesn't even seem like an experiment. You're just doing breakfast anyway, but we really got out of the habit. And so that's what we're going to be trying this year, this fall. Okay, so the next one is one that I love, and I have really great memories about this. I still do it a little bit, but not as much now that they're older and starting to be able to get themselves up, that kind of thing. But I'll play this. This will probably be the last clip that I play, but I'll play this real quick.
I used to go around at night and snuggle each of my 5 kids for a bit at bedtime. But that just prolonged our already too long bedtime routine. Plus, I was totally faking it. By bedtime, I needed my space and I did not enjoy the hugs. But I actually really love snuggling in the morning when I'm refreshed. It's a nice, gentle way to wake them up and we can talk about the day ahead. I start at about 6:30 and make my way from kid to kid. I also started bringing them a glass of water to drink right away because we rarely drink enough water around here.
Okay, so I do think that is a great idea, the water thing. Like it's just something to do and maybe something to kind of hold them accountable for sitting up and staying up if I give them a glass of ice water. Um, I'm going to try that again, see if that works, especially with some of my older kids who we've had some trouble waking up in the mornings. I did love that time when I would just have some snuggle time in the morning. Again, I'm just not waking up early. I'm probably not gonna keep doing this, but I do kind of still do it with my 10-year-old. I love remembering this little ritual that we had. It really was great. And I think I'm gonna actually start doing the glass of water thing again. I kind of forgot about that. And it's so good for us to drink a glass of water right when we wake up. Plus, I think it might help get my teenagers to actually sit up and make the wake up stick because they tend to just go back to sleep after I wake them up. So maybe the water will help that. So I kind of forgot about that. So glad I kept a record of these experiments. I'm going to try that experiment again. The snuggling thing, I still kind of do it sometimes with my 10-year-old. Not as much with my teens, although once in a while, but I think I'll just stick with the glass of water and try and get them up with that. So I thought that was a good one. And honestly, if we're talking experiments, I have tried just about everything to get, especially a certain one of my children up in the morning for school, even resorting to an Orby gun. I even shot him with an Orby gun to get him up when I was frustrated one morning. Obviously, it didn't hurt him. Um, it was just one of the tactics when nothing else was rousing the child from bed. Yeah, we've tried all the different alarm clocks, pulling him out of his bed, water over his head, all the things often suggested by him. He was the one who suggested I wake him up with water on his head. We are still working on his awakening, but we're going to start this year optimistic and start with this glass of water technique. I will let you know how it goes. He has to wake up at about 5:45 to be able to get to his early morning class on time. So we will see how it goes and I will keep you posted. The next experiments are around lunches, and I actually can't remember a time when my kids weren't making their lunches, but my big experiment in 2019 was having my kids make their own lunches. So I guess there was a time that I was making their lunches for them. But since then, all my kids, and I don't know if my 10-year-old ever had a time when I made lunches for him without his help, at least. He's always been helping me make his lunch just because that was the system when he started going to school. So, yeah, my kids make their own lunches. Some do it the night before because that's when they like to do it. Some do it the morning of, and that is a little bit more hectic, but that's what they want to do. Since that experiment of having my kids make their own lunch, we've done several different things. Like my high schoolers have experimented with what it's like when they drain their bank account and go out to eat every day at lunch. And they get to see the consequences of that. So that's been fun. We've also had 1 year where the kids ate school lunch every day after my accident because that was just the time we were in. They did not love that. So they're back to making their own lunches and very occasionally eating school lunches. But what we do is I just have them kind of roughly plan out what they want on a Sunday, what they want for their lunch that week. And then I hand them my phone and they put the groceries that they want in Walmart. We just use the app for delivery. So they put all the stuff in. I do a final check just to make sure they haven't snuck in anything crazy, which sometimes happens, like excessive amounts of soda, things like that. But anyway, that just makes sure that they're in charge of getting the things that they want in their lunch into our house. So that's how we kind of do it now. The high schoolers will kind of see what they end up doing this year. I'm still trying to convince them to eat at home more often as the economic solution, but we shall see. But one of the things that's tricky about packing lunches is keeping the food that is for lunches reserved for lunches. You know, they often want to eat those for snacks when they come home from school, and then we don't have anything to pack in the lunches. So that's kind of been an ongoing struggle. I've solved it in a couple different ways and with I don't know, different levels of success. For a while, I actually had a lock on my pantry, which makes me sound a little crazy. I am not withholding food. They always had plenty of access to healthy food, but I would just kind of keep, my pantry staples that they weren't interested in, but I'd also keep the lunch food that was reserved for lunch in the locked pantry, and only I knew the code for that. And so I would just open that up when it was time to pack lunches. They could get the things that they needed, and then I'd just close that back up. That worked for a little while and it was great, but then it kind of became a hassle and my kids got a little more self-control. So we kind of went to a system where if there's like extra desirable foods that I know the kids might try to eat before they get a chance to put it in their lunches, I just let them be in charge of that. So I divvy out, like, I'll use Gushers as an example. I don't like Gushers, but my kids like Gushers, and once in a while I let them get them. And so I just say, okay, we have 20 packets, 4 kids at home. Everybody gets 5. You can keep them in your own cubby in the mud room, and they can portion those out how they want during the week. Then it's all on them. They're pretty good about not stealing from each other's cubbies, and that works great now. So we have moved beyond the locked pantry, but that's kind of how we keep things available for school lunches. The 5th experiment, if I do say so myself, is one of my more genius ideas because, the kids, especially when they were littler, they were always angling for more iPad time. But I especially did not want to give them iPad time in the morning, even if they were ready for school. It just distracted all the other kids. They would flock to it and it would keep them from getting ready. So even, if they're like, well, I finished all my stuff, can I have the iPad? I did not want it in the morning. But then I got this genius idea to say yes to the iPad time, but only if it was in the car. So that way they're already in there. It's not like I have to be like, okay, get off the iPad and get in the car. They're already in the car. So then when the kids wanted to flock to them, I would make sure that the kids were all ready before they got to the car. But it ended up lovely. They would all just kind of hurry and get ready, all be in the car. And then when it was time to go, I could just step out into the car where all my kids were hovered around this iPad. I didn't have to pull them away from anything to get them to school. It just worked great for a long time, as long as that iPad kind of had that same allure for them. Anyway, it served a very good purpose. The next one is socks. So I don't have to go into great detail, but I would make sure that I had one type of sock for each kid that was recognizable and all the same socks so they didn't have to be matched. Like they're all white, they don't have any stripes or anything like that, or they're all black, whatever. Just to make that getting ready easier. You didn't have to go scrounging for socks. But then I made sock dispensers in their cubbies out of PVC pipes. So it was just a PVC pipe with a little curve at the end, and you just stick the socks in for each person. Um, they could just grab them on their way out the door. That worked great for a while. They've kind of outgrown that. Some of them have decided they want different socks, or they've bought more expensive socks that they want. Anyway, they're all more capable of getting their socks together now, so it's not as big a deal. I'm actually probably going to remove them now, but when we needed it, they worked very well. So that was my sock experiment. The seventh experiment is not rocket science, and it's basically common sense, but sometimes you forget common sense when you're getting kids ready for school. So I just had to remind myself at some point to give them 10 and 5-minute warnings about when it was time to leave for school, because they're not looking at the clock, especially the younger ones. They don't exactly know what we're dealing with. So I would give, those warnings just so that they had these benchmarks and they knew that we were kind of ready to go. But something that made that a little bit more fun, and this is more like a 3-minute warning, but when it was about time to go, I would turn on that Home Alone song and blast it throughout the house, like the one where they're all getting ready to go to the airport. That one. And we would kind of scurry about to that song, and it somehow made it more fun and just kind of silly, and we'd run around crazy and get our stuff and go to the car. So that was a way to make it more playful instead of just like, I'm warning you, 5 minutes left, that kind of stuff. So you could choose another song, but that one is a really good one, especially if they love Home Alone. The next one is another super simple one, and it's just trying to make the trip to school fun. Often we were just still fighting as we got into the car, arguing about why somebody was making us late or whatever. It was just not super pleasant, or it would just be silent, and I don't know. We were not having pleasant drives to school. So we did several things to make it more fun on the way to school. One was just trading off who got to be the DJ for the ride to school. So, they got to choose the playlist, and, they each had a specific day, and we would sing along with the songs, or, they'd tell us why they loved a song or whatever. Anyway, it was just kind of a nice way to, trade off and get to enjoy some music on our way to school. Other times we would get into a podcast. For a while, we listened to 6 Minutes on the way to school because that was about the length of our drive. That's a podcast that you can still find. And it was really fun, especially for like the middle grades. So we enjoyed that. And then we'd look forward to the next day where we could hear the next installment. It's kind of a serial podcast, a story, a dramatization. It was good. Then when we were done with that, for a while, probably at least a year, we would listen to Kid News. And so that is a podcast that just has updated daily news stories, again, like 5 or 6 minutes, that are geared toward kids. It brought up some good conversations. There's like trivia afterwards. It was a really fun way to connect and kind of discuss interesting topics on the way to school. Sometimes, they'd bring up just interesting, unique stories, things that kids were doing in the world, or, but also just current events. So that was pretty fun too. So just a way to bond on the way to school. I've heard other moms that do awesome things, like they repeat affirmations, or they pray together, or they study scriptures together, or they give each other compliments, talk about their goals for the day, any of those things. Just do what fits for your kids. My kids didn't want anything serious. They just wanted something light and fun. And so that's why we did it this way. But you do what works for you. But that can be a meaningful time of connection rather than just grumpy fighting, which, also still happens sometimes. My last morning experiment comes after the drop off, and basically it's just to do something fun or relaxing right after you drop them off to refresh yourself from the madness. So when I had preschoolers, we started having special connection time right after I dropped them off. So with my daughter, it was dancing time. We would just blast some music, and we would dance in the living room. She usually wanted to do ballet, and so we would just be as graceful as we could doing improvisational ballet and we would just dance together and have fun. And my I had a son there too, and he would just join in with us. But that was what she wanted to do. Once she went to school, usually we would just have reading time with my youngest, and we would get a big stack of books and we would read to our heart's content. It was so much better for me than reading to him at night because then I was always trying to skip through and make it go as fast as we could, get to bedtime. I was exhausted. He was exhausted. It wasn't the best connection time. But when we read books right after we dropped the other kids off at school, it was awesome. We had so much fun, and he'd always ask for one more, and of course I'd give in. Anyway, it just led to some really great memories, and we had some great time. So it wasn't like, okay, we've dropped the kids off. Let's go home and get to work. We can finally get to work. It was okay, let's have some playtime. Once all my kids were in school, I tried to just have that be my time to do what I wanted to do, whether that was lie back down and get some more rest or read a book for a minute or do my scripture study, whatever I needed to fill my cup, crocheting and that kind of thing. And so I still do that when I'm done with all the morning rush. I come home and I just kind of have some decompression time, do something that's fun for me. So that was my last morning experiment. Let's move on to after school routine. So my biggest hack for that, when I had kids home and when I didn't, is just to try to get some rest right before you pick up the school kids. So that meant turning on a show for my preschoolers and at like 2 o'clock and just lying down, recharging myself for the craziness that was going to happen after school. When I didn't have preschoolers, I was able to actually have a real nap. And I don't always fall asleep, but often I do. And I still try to do this, at least lie down an hour to 30 minutes before I go pick everybody up. When I wasn't doing this, I found that I was just kind of grumpy and depleted when they got home. And I wanted to be a resource for them. They're tired, they're kind of grumpy. If we're all that way, it just doesn't work out well. So I try to get myself refreshed and then I can have some reserves to help them with whatever they need after school, and there's a lot of needs usually. So then I pick the kids up from school. The next experiment was one having to do with the messy car situation when you're in this school mode and you're living out of the car for after school activities, for getting to and from school. I don't know about you, but my car gets trashed and it happens really fast. They bring in more than they can take back out with them and it just gets chaotic. So sometimes when it gets crazy in there, I do what I call an offsite car cleanup. And so I just basically park somewhere on my way home from school, pull in somewhere and say, okay, we're going to do a little cleanup. I have a trash bag ready. They put all the trash in, they gather all the stuff that's theirs into a pile so it's ready to bring out of the car. If I wait to do the car cleanup when we get into our driveway, there's no incentive for them not to like run off and, oh, I have to do this first. I have to do this first. They just scatter and it didn't happen. So, but if I kind of hold them hostage a little bit and park before we get to our house, have them gather all their stuff, be ready for when we get home. This isn't something that I do every day, but as needed, it's a great experiment to try with your kids and see if it helps the car cleaning situation. Anyway, just a little hack for you. The third experiment is one that we're trying right now again. We've done it off and on, just depending on the schedules. So often my kids will have their extracurricular activities right after school, so they'll just stay there. And then I will pick them up, then we'll eat dinner at a normal time. But sometimes, like this fall, for example, we have extracurricular activities more starting at like 5 or 6. And so in that case, it's best if we have dinner right after they get home from school. Um, and it's tricky with the timing, so I have to try to make that before I go to pick them up and have it ready to either heat up real fast or just get ready real fast when they get home. But that preempts them from coming home, trashing the kitchen because they're all digging in to get different snacks, but then they have to rush away. Um, and then eat dinner late after practice. It's much better for me if we can have our main dinner right after school. They're starving usually. Um, we can just eat really quick and then go off and go our separate ways. So that's what works for us now. That really is mostly imperative for us in the fall because that's when they do mountain biking. That's when it is. So it really just depends on your schedule. But I guess the experiment is to look at your schedule, figure out the best timing for dinner each day, and then figure out how to make it work. Sometimes often that's crock pot, especially in the fall. It's cooling down. You feel like some of those warm meals. So often I'll just make it in the morning and then it'll be ready when they get home from school. Sometimes I'll make something in that hour or two before school gets out. It just depends. But just being flexible with your timing. And then, my husband is never there at that time to eat, but he just heats it up when he gets home. And then of course they're hungry again after all their sports, but that's when they kind of do a more do it yourself snacky type second dinner. It's going to happen either way. I prefer it that way because then they're more likely to be able to help with cleanup from the big meal. Um, and then I just kind of try and make sure they clean up after themselves in that second dinner. So that's what's working. I'm hoping that that's going to work again for us in the fall. Okay, so now on to extracurriculars, which can be overwhelming and all consuming, especially when you have a lot of kids like I do. So one of my favorite experiments is hiring other kids to help with things like this. So um, sometimes that's my own kids, sometimes that's other kids. So examples of how I've done that is one of my kids was playing football and we had a bunch of little kids, me and some of the other families had little kids that would come to the practices with them. So I hired my 10-year-old to work as a soccer coach for all the other little kids that wanted to who were at that football practice. So he would bring his cones and his clipboards and he had a friend do it with him and they would like come up with all these drills for the kids to do and all these fun activities so that while they were just kind of hanging out there at the practice, they had their own practice to go to and I wasn't having to sign them up for soccer. So I had two younger kids. My 10-year-old did a great job. He had a whistle and everything. He loved it. I paid him. I don't even remember what I paid him, but I paid him a little bit. Some of the other parents paid him a little bit. It was such a win-win. It was really great. And they all got to run around. They were safe and watched and entertained. It was just great. I've also hired a piano babysitter. So when I was teaching my own kids piano, especially one in particular, it was not going well and he would fight me and it was a battle every time we sat down to piano lessons. So I actually hired a girl that was his same age to come and watch the other kids while I taught him his piano lessons. But this could also be while you're helping your kids practice the piano or something. Anytime that you need to just be focused on one kid or when you're helping your kid with homework, that kind of thing. So anyway, I would hire her and he was too embarrassed to like have a fit while she was there and she entertained my kids wonderfully. She was too young to babysit on her own, so she was thrilled to be hired to babysit and she would bring the cutest things to do. It was awesome. So this is basically like a mother's helper kind of role. Um, but it allowed us to get through those piano lessons, and she would come once a week. Everybody looked forward to it, including her. It was fantastic. But yeah, this works great for homework. This works great for any number of things, even if you're just making dinner and you need the kids to be entertained. Um, Hiring 10-year-olds are kind of golden. They're awesome. They're playful. They're eager to help. And especially when it's not in their own family. And anyway, it's amazing. 10, 11, 12, golden ages to be mother's helpers. Um, Experiment number 4 was that I kind of realized I just try to utilize these pockets of time. It's just so busy driving kids around to these practices and stuff. So, um, for another season, a soccer season, um, everybody else kind of had something going on at that time, but my daughter did not. And so I was hauling her with me to soccer practice for the older boys. And that could have been just boring time, but we brought our roller skates and we would have roller skate dates during soccer practice. And it was so great. We had so much fun. Sometimes if she needed it, we'd also, get some of our homework done during that. So once I tried that and it was so successful, we would also do that with one of my son's guitar lessons. And so at that point, I had 2 kids that I was bringing with me to guitar lessons. It was right downtown, which was kind of fun. So we would walk around, and we eventually settled on this routine where we would walk to City Hall, and there was this statue there with like a memorial with people's names on it. And we would like pretend it was our secret code, and we'd have to like push the letters that corresponded with our name, like find the letters of our names and push each one as a secret code to get into our secret hideout at this place. And then we had a certain part of the lawn, and we'd have to touch the trees in a certain sequence. Anyway, we were like, it was our secret hideout, and we'd play games on the lawn, and I don't know, just do various things, invent different things to do in our secret place that nobody else could get into because they didn't know our codes. Anyway, we just made up silly games, but it became a really fun memory for us. And we still think of it fondly as we pass City Hall. Another experiment that worked out really well was for one of my sons who always was so gung ho about trying every new sport and was always so excited, wanted me to sign him up for this new thing. And then once we would start it, he just did not want to leave home. He wanted to just stay home and didn't want to go to the practice. And here I've paid all this money and we've committed to a team, and he says he wants to do it. And when he actually goes, he loves it. It's just that transition, that change that he would freak out about. And it was like pulling teeth to get him to go to anything. So what I eventually, we tried a bunch of things, including dragging him out of the cars, kicking and screaming. Sometimes it was not pleasant. But at some point I had this great idea that we would just go really early. So we would go and we were like, let's go play at the park. And we gave ourselves plenty of time to get there. And then he could play with his younger siblings at the playground, wherever the practice was. And then he just has to walk across to the field and start the practice. Somehow that like middle ground, not going straight from car to structured practice, is exactly what he needed. He just needed some time to like be his own man, have his own identity, his very independent child. That really worked for him. He could, have that free play and then make the transition. So sometimes it's just trying to find any intermediate step if there's that really big problem with transitions. We just inserted an intermediate step, and that often helps him. Even still that he's a teenager, some of those tactics kind of work, just having an intermediate step. Next up is some homework experiments. This is not something that I am an expert in and probably should not be giving you experiments to try on homework because I have not really figured out a way. My kids have struggled with getting homework done, turning it in, being organized, all the things. It's kind of been the bane of our existence since school started. I have really only one who is self motivated to do homework. The others, it's a struggle. So we've tried lots of different things like, you know, treats if they're filling things in on their planners and keeping track, or, fun snacks during homework, fun rituals around homework, trading off playing games and doing homework, or I don't know, lots of different things and with different levels of success. This is one of those things where we kind of had to have a deep arsenal of different experiments because something would work for a little while and then it would stop working and then we'd have to try something new and just keep it fresh. So sometimes that's just the answer, is just to have a lot of experiments of how to make homework happen. One of our best tried and true things with like spelling words or memorization of any kind is we just call it the stair game, and they stand at the bottom of the stairs, and I give them the spelling word. We'll just say spelling for now. I give them the spelling word. They spell it. If they get it right, they go up a step. If they get it wrong, they go down a step. And they're just trying to make it up to the top of the stairs. That works with some of my kids who are more energetic and need something physical to do while they're doing their homework. Other things that have worked is doing homework without a chair, things that they're already trying in classrooms to for the kids that have trouble sitting, especially when they've been sitting at school. My preference would be not to have homework at all for these kids. They just need to come home and have fun, but sometimes homework is inevitable. Anyway, so those things have all worked great. Another thing that worked for us for a while is we would actually, I'd pick them up from school. We'd stop. I'd either have a snack for them in the car. That was usually what it was. But sometimes we'd splurge and do something special and stop at McDonald's for a smoothie or something on the way, um, or French fries, whatever. Just a small snack so that they had food. I mean, that's a given. They must have food in their bellies before homework. But then we would just drive to the library, and our library has a bunch of like fun options for different like study carrels or study rooms, different couches. Anyway, just different areas where they could do their homework. So I would just take a lot of them. We would just take them all to the library. They'd all find a place to do their work, and I'd kind of float around and help as needed, or I'd park myself and do work myself, and they knew where to find me if they had questions. So that worked great for us for a while, just changing the setting, fewer distractions, something kind of fresh and new. To They'd all get their homework out of the way, and then we could come home. That was, during times we'd often do that in the winter when they have fewer extracurriculars. That would never work in the fall because we're running around too much. But that was just something that mixed things up if you're looking for a way to help with homework. Okay, on to bedtime just briefly. We'll talk about a couple experiments, but I also have a whole episode about getting kids to go to bed. You can listen to that. I'll link that in the show notes. But here are just some of the standard experiments that we've tried over the years that have worked. So one thing that I love, and I'm hoping we'll be able to make it work with our schedule right now. It's a little hairy, but I love to have gathering time right before bed with everybody. Just one time that the family can all get together, because often it doesn't happen at dinner time, just because everybody's out and about. And so we try to gather for a family prayer, hopefully a little devotional scripture thought, something like that. This is often when they can eat their bedtime snack after they've been doing their extracurriculars and come back hungry. Other times we've made that a time to give each other compliments. Um, Sometimes it's just logistical, talking about, who needs to be where and who needs a ride, all that kind of stuff. But just a time to come together. When it's still light outside, we try to do this on our deck and it's lovely. Other times we just do it in our living room, but just trying to have that gathering time before bed. And then, that's looked different over the years too. It was much easier when they were little. Um, but but if you have not experimented with that, I highly recommend it. It's really nice just to come together and have some connection time at the end of the day. Um, the other experiments have mostly been centered around just trying to get kids to get in bed and stay in bed. um, we've done different things with toothbrushing where, yeah, sometimes we use an app. There's a Sonicare app that they like where they brush their teeth along with this little furry guy. So look for the Sonicare Kids app. That has worked in the past. That was probably the most lingering thing that has worked with toothbrushing. But another thing sometimes works are those like little pellets that they can chew on after they brush to see if they got everything. Or sometimes we have them do it before they brush to just show what their teeth look like if they don't brush. And then it turns them like purple or pink or something, and then you just have to brush it away, and it helps them, realize that they're actually doing some work when they're doing the toothbrush, when they're brushing their teeth, to kind of help motivate them. But yeah, toothbrushing has always been a bit of a struggle. Even sometimes into their teens, they need reminders to brush their teeth. But those are some of the things that help for the little kids, or playing games like I would pretend there were monkeys in their teeth one day, or lion, I just make up what they were brushing away, and oh, I still see a little monkey over there, or sugar bugs or whatever. So some of those kind of games with toothbrushing and getting all ready. I love the book Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Kids. That was kind of my Bible for getting kids to bed and figuring out sleep routines, all those things. But one of the things they mention in that book is to have sleep rules. So often with my little kids, my preschoolers, we would recite the sleep rules. Number 1, stay in bed. Number 2, close your eyes. Number 3, zip your lips, that kind of thing. I don't remember what all the rules were, but we would just kind of recite those together and remember what they were. But there were times when I had to physically like stay in the room and, do that thing where the lights are out, you're sitting there quietly, not responding to them, and just every time they get out of bed, just quietly put them back in, not giving them the stimulus they are looking for. So there's many nights that I did that. Sometimes I would substitute game time for story time. Like, just play a short game with them, board game or hand game or whatever, just to mix things up. But, then just the typical story time. For a while, one of my sons, I gave him little massages or back scratches before bed. Um, One experiment that worked for us really well, when we had kind of the different ages, is we would have teen time, is what we called it, which they kind of thought was cheesy, but that's okay. That's part of it. Um, so we let the teenagers go downstairs and watch something, and while I put the younger ones to bed, and then they were not bothering me and trying to interrupt me for help with this and that while I was putting the kids to bed. And it actually really solved some of our connection problems among my kids when they had that, like, they kind of felt like they were beating the system and getting to stay up later, and they had their shows that they connected with. So that worked for us for a while really well. One thing with one of my kids that he's always been motivated by candy, and it's just how he's wired. Um, for a while, I was struggling with him staying in bed so much that I would sit there at his door, and every time I would have like a little bag of Skittles, and every time he would pop out of bed, I would eat one more of his Skittles, and whatever was left in the bag is what he would get to eat the next day. So I would I would obviously not going to let him eat candy that night, but but he knew that he would get all the Skittles that were left in the bag in the morning, and Call it bribery. I don't know. It may not have been the best parenting technique, but it sure worked for a while. And that little amount of Skittles did him no harm, and it sure motivated him to keep in bed for a while. So those are some of the experiments that we have tried over the years. I hope some of those give you a little help for this back to school time. There's always those fall episodes that you can listen to if you want more of these ideas, or to hear more than just the routine stuff that we experimented with in the fall. So they're all listed. Enjoy, and best of luck as you get back to school and try to figure out your routines. I would love to know what experiments you're trying. If you try any of these, awesome. But I would rather hear some of the just creative experiments that you are trying. So share those as I share clips this week on Instagram, or send me an email at whitney@howshemoms.com. DM me, whatever. But I would love to hear the experiments that are working or not working at your house, especially as we start this new fall. I'm sure I can get some great ideas from you guys. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Family Lab podcast. You can find this episode and all my other episodes on my YouTube channel, The Family Lab, and you can also find them at my new website at familylabpodcast.com. That's also where you can find the episodes organized by topic, so that if you go there with a question, you can find the answer to that question. You can also sign up for live events that I'm going to be having this season, and you can shop for some of the workshops and worksheets I've created to help you experiment in your own family labs. Special thanks to my assistant Bailey Blake for her editing work, and to my web designer Kimberly Hansen. And as always, thanks to my mom Susan Singley for playing the theme music for this podcast. She played this song all the time when we were growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.